In this video, I'm here to admit
that I was wrong about ChatGPT.
a few months ago, I made a video when ChatGPT first came out and was available to the public, and I kind of shared my opinions on it, and that video was pretty misinformed. I didn't know much about the tool, I didn't have a lot of experience using it, and I didn't make very strong arguments in that video about why it might replace programmers, why you shouldn't be worried, etc. So now, a few months later, I have a lot more experience using this. I've used it in a lot of different contexts. For example, some of my videos have been scripted by ChatGPT. A lot of my shorts, it's helped give me kind of ideas for those. And even from a programming standpoint, I've been handing off and kind of delegating a lot of smaller tasks to ChatGPT. So in this video, I want to share with you my new kind of formed opinion on this, where I see it going in the next few months and years, and how I'm using it as a programmer to be more efficient. So first, let me share with you how I use ChatGPT. Now, I will admit, this is not a massive part of my workflow. A lot of what I'm doing as more of a senior programmer right now is writing or architecting code myself. However, I do treat ChatGPT kind of like a low-paid intern, where I'm handing it off kind of smaller tasks, discrete things that I can describe relatively fast, and that would be faster for me to describe to the AI than to write from scratch by myself. Now, a lot of you might relate to this problem where you're working in some kind of engineering team, and if you're in any kind of management role or you're kind of leading other developers, oftentimes it's actually faster for you just to write the code and kind of fix a problem than it is to try to describe what needs to be done to someone else. So in the situation in which it's very easy for me to describe something, I'll go to ChatGPT, describe that, and then have it spit out that code. For example, I'll write some code, maybe like an API endpoint, and then I'll paste that into ChatGPT and say, hey, can you write a unit test for this? Or can you make sure this code doesn't have any bugs? I'll treat it as kind of like an auditor for some of my code, and I'll get it to do monotonous and just repetitive tasks that would just cost me a lot of keystrokes, but not a lot of like computational effort in terms of me thinking about what the actual task needs to do. So testing is a big thing that I ask it to do. I'll give it kind of the objective of what this code should do. I'll ask it to write the test for the code and then to ensure that the code kind of adheres to those tests. And then I also get it to do things like writing small functions. So for example, if I need a function that's reversing a string, I know that's very straightforward, but I might ask ChatGPT to do that. I might also get it to refactor some code. So maybe I write some really messy spaghetti code, as long as it's not super long, and I'll say, hey, can you clean this up for me, rewrite it? And usually it gives me a pretty decent solution. Now, in my experience using this, ChatGPT is pretty good at doing code generation, especially in the popular programming languages like JavaScript, Python, etc., which are mostly the ones that I'm using. However, it does have quite a few mistakes. A lot of times it will incorrectly write a test. Sometimes its code has actual syntax errors in it, and I need to tell it to correct its mistake. The interesting thing here is that when I tell it that it made a mistake, even if I don't point out where that mistake is, it actually is pretty good at going in and correcting it. So that's pretty powerful, the fact that it can actually reason based on what I'm telling it and say, oh, I need to review this code and fix a specific mistake here. There's also times where it uses like a very obscure feature or something that I don't want to be in the code base. So I'll tell it, hey, do this, but write it in a different way. Same in terms of efficiency. So that's kind of how I'm treating ChatGPT, really like a low-paid intern where I'm handing off and delegating these different tasks. And I would use it more if I felt that it would be faster for me to describe the tasks to the AI rather than just to solve them myself. Now, when it comes to kind of architectural decisions and larger type decisions here, I'm still handling that on my own. I might ask for tips or advice from ChatGPT, but at the end of the day, I'm kind of the one that needs to make the decision, having the full context of the project. So here's where I'll talk about where ChatGPT is kind of lacking and why we still do need programmers in the world. Now, I think that's obvious, but the reality is, if you're working on a large application that has hundreds, maybe even thousands of files, all kinds of different systems, different integrations, deployments, all of this stuff going on, ChatGPT at the current point in time is not capable of ingesting all of that data, building context around the project, and then putting something into practice, right? Like actually building an endpoint or building whatever it may be. You need to give it very specific instructions, just like you would give like a more low-level employee that doesn't fully understand the system. So in my situation, I can't rely on ChatGPT to write a majority of the code for the code base because I would have to give it so much information for it to be able to do that. And at that point, it's just faster for me to write it myself. However, where I think things are going, and from what I've heard and kind of rumors of, soon ChatGPT will actually have plugins. This means you can connect it to like Google Sheets, Google Docs, eventually probably GitHub, maybe even your IDE or your development kind of environment that you have set up. If that actually happens, that could be a massive game changer for how good the code generation could be from ChatGPT. If this can hook into my GitHub repo, read the entire GitHub repo, and then give me suggestions on how I could clean up my code, refactor it, different ways to write things, even start producing individual files, directories, systems, that will be an absolute game changer. And I think that we're going in that direction, and that's kind of why I'm making this video. Because previously when I looked at ChatGPT, I said, okay, this is cool, but really it's only capable of acting as, again, like a low-paid intern, where it's doing very discrete tasks that need to be described in extreme detail. If we get to the point where it can ingest this massive amount of data and it can view the entire code base and actually kind of reason about that and build context about the systems, then that's going to change things drastically. At least that's what I feel. And from what I've heard, that's the way that we're going. Soon there'll be all these plugins directly in ChatGPT, and I don't know how powerful or how good they're going to be immediately, but I know they'll get to a point where ChatGPT can go to GitHub, read your GitHub issues, and start submitting pull requests that are fixing those issues for you. If we get to that point, that does seriously put quite a few programmers
in danger.
So with that said, what does that mean for people that are more junior, maybe just getting started and trying to land a programming job right now? Well, from what I've seen, there hasn't been a huge wipeout of programming jobs. Obviously, that's different than, all the Google layoffs, Facebook, all of that. I don't think that's really related to AI. Regardless, in kind of the general market, not this huge tech market, I haven't seen like a massive decrease in programming listings. In fact, programmers are still pretty high in demand. And I think that's because a lot of companies realize that even though these AI tools exist, they still need programmers to use these tools. Like your average layman person can't really go in and accurately use these tools and even follow the instructions that are being provided by it. And they want to train employees so that eventually the more junior level guys can move up to be senior programmers, right? Eventually, we're going to run out of senior programmers. People are going to leave companies, and there needs to be some kind of investment and training for people that are at a lower level so they can eventually be a more senior developer. So to wrap up this video, I'll just say that as I've used this tool more and more, really my opinion has become that this is not necessarily going to wipe out programmers or replace software developers. It's more going to change the way in which people work, right? It's going to change how your average developer goes about contributing to a code base. It's possible that you have ChatGPT that's now reviewing your code on a GitHub repo. That could very well be happening in the next few months. I just know that things are happening very, very quickly. Obviously, there's a ton of investment in OpenAI and just in AI tools in general. And this is kind of the next big push when it comes to technology. So I'm trying to watch it fairly carefully. Anyways, I think if you're a programmer, if you're just getting started, you don't need to freak out and panic a ton. It's definitely worth having it on your radar and considering how you can utilize these tools. I think these tools can also allow you to learn programming a lot faster and to hopefully kind of reduce that skill gap between yourself and someone who's maybe been programming for a long time. I think really the main point is that we're all going to have to adapt to this. This is going to change the way in which we write code and produce software. And even though we might not like it, it's just the reality of what's happening. And that's kind of what I wanted to state here. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.